Good morning, good morning, good morning. Dan Caldwell here, and welcome to Dan's Place. I have been tardy and not visible over the last several weeks, but kind of back on schedule now and thrilled to be with you this morning. So, once again, welcome to Dan's Place. And today we'd like to talk about the fact that all living things grow, and they grow all of their lifetime. And so let me just talk about a couple of things uh, and start with just this brief thought. Not all living things that are growing in us and around us are destined to improve us. Let me say that one more time. Not all living things that are growing in us and around us are destined to improve us. We need to be careful and watch out for those weeds in our lives. You know what I'm talking about when I refer to weeds? I'm talking about attitudes, hatred, bitterness, envy, strife, emulations, seditions, bigotry, behaviors that violate our very basic values. The list could go on and on and on, but I believe you get the idea. So what is a weed? Well, a true definition is that a weed is a plant that is not valued where it is growing, and is usually of a vigorous nature, especially one that tends to overgrow or choke out more. Interesting, isn't it? Now, I said all that to say this. Where my wife and I live now, we've lived here for almost 20 years now. And when we moved here, there were certain boundaries that we were told that this is where the property line begins and this is where it ends. Over time, over the past 20 years, as we've mowed and maintained our property, the boundaries have moved. And we didn't realize they had moved until recently we had employed a gentleman to do a survey of the property. And what we found out was that the boundaries had moved in some instances as much as 6 feet. And so I'm going, oh my goodness, what created this? Well, what created this was that we continued to maintain the property and mow, but as the weeds began to migrate onto the property, we were not as diligent to keep the property line where it was. In fact, we surrendered the property line to the weeds. Now, there's a couple of things that I've learned about weeds, and let me just share them with you real quickly on this morning's devotion. Okay, number one, they will take up whatever ground you surrender. Weeds will take up whatever ground you surrender. So what is it in your life that you've surrendered to the weeds in your life? What is it that you've given up on? What is it that you've refused to try to maintain in a values perspective and you've given way to the weeds? Number two, they'll continue growing unless you pluck them up or kill them. Now, plucking them up doesn't mean that you've killed them. In fact, they may have a root, and the root will produce the fruit. Even if you cut them down, they will come back as long as there's a root. Once again, the root produces the fruit. Those weeds are hardy. They're diligent. They keep coming back again and again and again, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of them until you get the root. Next, they're resilient, and they're more resilient and have greater resolve than those other portions that are not weeds. What I'm talking about there is the emotions that are attached to certain situations in your life. They keep coming back. You think you've conquered them, you think you've overcame them, but then all of a sudden it shows up at the most inopportune times and in the most ridiculous ways, and you're going, I thought I'd handled that. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's a relationship. And you feel like, man, I've got that behind me. And then all of a sudden, it rears its ugly head. Please be aware that the weeds are still there and will keep coming back. And they'll test the boundaries to see whether or not your resolve has strengthened and you no longer will allow them access. And then finally, literally, they'll strangle out the good things if you don't deal with them. They'll strangle out the things that produce life. Well, so what I am in the process of doing now after I've found out that the weeds have continued migrating onto the property is that I'm trying to reestablish the property lines and the boundaries of the property. And I'm doing that little by little. I can't do it overnight because it's too big a task, but I can do it little by little. How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time, right? So all living things grow and they continue growing all of their life. But so do the weeds. So, my friend, my encouragement to you today is to deal with the weeds in your life so the good things that are there can begin to grow and to flourish. Until the next time, this is Dan Caldwell saying, God bless and keep the fire burning.